Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to the Richard Watkins podcast. Super excited to be with each and every one of you today. There has been so much that we need to talk about, so much going on in the world since the last time we spoke. Next week, when we tune in, we'll be on the subject of public health. And then after that, we'll bring in an expert on aviation. It is going to be absolutely amazing, and we're going to cover a wide variety of topics. But I really wanted to take today to go over a few things that have been just absolutely top of mind, and they're in the world of technology. And I hope I pronounced this right, but the Majorana one, the quantum computing chip developed by Microsoft. I haven't heard it pronounced that often. I've just read it and given it my own pronunciation each time I read it. Um, but I wanted to start there, right? And I'm not going to get into a lot of the details of quantum computing because, quite frankly, I don't know them all, right? I am not a computer scientist. I will bring in a computer scientist to talk really specifically about the implications of quantum computing here in the future. We've had computer science experts on the show before to talk about items such as artificial intelligence, which we'll touch on again here today. But right now, we kind of want to touch on the subject of quantum computing and really what it means. And quite frankly, we don't quite yet know what it means. So not only I, not a computer science expert, but in general, we just do not understand the ramifications of quantum computing. Now, in theory, what we know is quantum computing will increase the computing power and capacities that we already have significantly. And I'm using the term significant as a conservative term because I don't want to overstate its implications. Because how huge or how game changing quantum computing will be, well, that's a story that only time will tell. In theory, as I said, it is going to significantly improve computing power, kind of in a sense where we'll look at where we are today, which we believe is one of the highest points of technology and innovation that we've experienced in human history. I know that is debatable, but in many regards, today, the day we are living in now, is one of the greatest times of innovation and technology that we've ever lived in. But even in saying that, quantum computing, in theory, can make what we look at today just seem just archaic, right? Um, it is very, very likely that from a technological standpoint and a computing standpoint, that we are only looking at the tip of the iceberg in regards of technology. And what does that mean? Again, this is why we are so passionate about what we do and why I am always so excited to come to you through the Richard Watkins podcast, where we cover huge, huge issues and we put together episodes once a week on YouTube and on Facebook. Last week, we reposted the video in which we talked to a computer scientist out of NC State about artificial intelligence, sort of as a primer for what we wanted to try to talk about today. And again, it is no script, unscripted. And when we bring in guests and talk to thought leaders, policymakers, and decision makers, those are unscripted as well. And so we really want to give you unfiltered opinions and views from experts who do it. And then I try to plug in little hot topics here and there to kind of fill in the gaps, right? And that's exactly what I wanted to do today. Again, this is the Richard Watkins podcast put together by the Science Policy Action Network, or SPAN. Visit SPAN at span-inc.org. That is span-inc.org. Um, Going back to the conversation about quantum computing, it's something that I've been thinking about for quite some time. Um, Even when I was working in educational administration, even as a virologist, when some of these topics started to emerge, um, it was always fascinating. What uh, could be um, once quantum computing went from the world of theory to actuality, right? And to practice and something that you could consume and use in your everyday life. And really, what would it mean? I think when we think about technology in general, we really look at it as something that has been evolving rapidly. Think about technology that you're able to experience every day. Right now, I am recording my podcast on my laptop through Zoom, which is a company that you utilize for telecommunications, video interface, so many more things. I'm able to record it here and then then post it on so many different social media sites, which have become the majority of the communication that we have now. The vast majority of communication that we have now is via social media and usually through a piece of technology. I think um, it is becoming more and more infrequent that we're actually communicating uh, directly to another person, right? Because technologies are making it easier and easier to have conversations with anyone all around the world, right? But think about where we've been. Over the past 40 years, we've gone from thinking it being amazing to have cable television or the emergence of the mobile phone, the cellular phone, in which that phone was like in a suitcase that you had to carry with you. And then there was a huge breakthrough to have the brick cell phone, right? And so think about where we've come now. Now we've got phones that are powerful computers that we're able to keep in our pockets and do every single thing from a technological standpoint that we need to do for most of our day-to-day operations or day-to-day activities. We can do that through a cell phone, right? And so one would be justified in thinking like, wow, the rate of technological advancement has just been incredible, and the impact that it has had on us has also been incredible. So let that sink in and then consider that it is possible that the growth or the improvement on technology and computing that we stand to see, from this development of a quantum chip, um, could just really blow that out of the water, right? We haven't seen anything yet. And what does that mean? What technological applications of that computing power will we be able to enjoy or interface with or interact with? What will that mean for a wide variety of things that we consume, that we take in, right? Think about your favorite thing. Think about something that you like. I love movies, for example, right? And one of the things that I've really found fascinating, and one of the things that I've really enjoyed about movies is the level of technology that has gone into movies, and how innovations in that technology have really had an impact on movies and really have changed the stories that movie makers are able to tell. And that has been made possible through many innovations and many developments and breakthrough in movie making technologies and computing. And if you were to say that we are going to see just a massive and rapid evolution of technology and how we are experiencing movies, I can't imagine what that would be. I can't imagine what the graphics and the visuals and the sounds and what that would look like, and the stories that you're able to tell and what that would mean, from the point of view of a consumer, right? And like I said, we're just talking about computing powers, right? But maybe I'm not even thinking about this the right way, right? We also probably need to think about it in terms of the immersive entertainment experience, right? Which is also developing in parallel. That's the interesting thing about these technologies, is that applications for those technologies seem to be developing in parallel. We'll have applications that emerge that we currently don't have now, right? But some applications that we currently have will evolve in parallel with technologies, right? So as we're seeing quantum computing roll out, we'll see other applications evolve and roll out, and immersive entertainment is one of those things. So just imagine now, uh, visuals and audio powered by quantum computing that are indistinguishable from real visual and auditory experiences, and you couple that with a virtual reality entertainment interface. You may have something that from a consumer standpoint is indistinguishable from real life. And what will that mean from like an entertainment aspect? And then since we're on the topic of entertainment, you have to ask that about all forms of entertainment, right? All forms of entertainment, from movies to shows, right? To sporting events, to the news, right? Everything, right? You'll be able to experience it differently. Like, think about the ways that you've been able to consume news throughout history. Folks used to consume news through the newspaper, because then individuals were able to consume news through the radio and then through television, right? And that ended up changing, and then you were able to get the same news from those news channels on the internet as they created websites. And then again, as social media emerged and evolved, you then were able to get news from social media. But then the news began to get its news from social media, right? And so, again, that is another example of how things evolve in parallel with one another, right? So you've had the emergence of social media and other technologies, and the news and companies associated with the economy of news evolve with those technologies just in parallel. And so when you're talking about an immersive entertainment experience that utilizes quantum computing technologies that make things indistinguishable from real life, you have to have questions about what does that mean about the news as well, right? And again, you just have to apply that to every single aspect of computing, right? As this breakthrough um, begins to develop and begins to make its way into the marketplace, and then from that marketplace it's able to be disseminated and applied in a wide variety of ways. It's really, really difficult at this point to really say what the impact will be, but there will be an impact, because every single technological breakthrough has some impact. Um, some impacts are more immediately felt than others, but most breakthroughs just have an impact just because they're breakthroughs. I think another thing that you know, I wanted to talk about, and we'll bring in an expert to talk about quantum computing, right? Because I think that is a topic that we have to talk more about, because it involves aspects of physics, right? Um, and that also has to matter. It involves just this evolution in the way of computing happens, not in a binary of zeros and ones, but a different way that creates so many different possibilities in regards of computing, in regards to the qubit and so on and so forth. And like I said, we'll bring in an expert to talk about that, and it'll just change the way computing even happens. But that's happening as we are seeing developments like in artificial intelligence, right? And so, what is going to be the biggest kind of technological breakthrough? It's hard to say because AI, quantum computing, those things are going to feed into one another, and so even a breakthrough like artificial intelligence, we've only seen the tip of the iceberg, because like I said, as quantum computing begins to develop and begins to make its way into different applications, and different supercomputer capacities, we're going to see just so much happen, and it's really hard to predict what all of it means because we've got uh, tremendous supercomputers. We've got the most powerful supercomputer in the world, uh, here in the United States, to my understanding. We've got the emergence of just amazing artificial intelligence systems, and then we've got just these breakthroughs of quantum computing, coming on board. But when we talk about the impact, one of the things that is just interesting to really consider is, ways that AI right now, for example, are being applied. And I think what we're seeing now are um, AI systems being deployed in so many different areas of our lives. So I think one of the ways that you can really kind of see it is its prevalence now in pop culture, right? And just culture in general, right? You see AI as a topic of conversation, where two people are engaged in a conversation on whether something that they're seeing is generated by artificial intelligence or not. I think that's a clear indication, right, that it's having an impact not only on our economy and not only in the labor and the labor force, but it's having an impact on who or what we like to talk about and what we discuss and how we think of ourselves, at that level. And I just think that's a really interesting thing. And now, companies and folks are really trying to really figure out, all right, how can I deploy these large language models in a wide variety of ways, right? So many people who are applying for jobs now are using, Chat GPT, or other artificial intelligence systems to produce resumes, covers letters that are fantastic, and do it really, really quick. And they're able to flood employers through LinkedIn or Indeed or other job finder websites or applications, and they're able to kind of flood those systems with those applications because they have that kind of support. But now you're having, artificial intelligence technologies interface with every aspect of our lives, right? Where you're writing something, and artificial intelligence assistant then comes online and just gives you recommendations on how you're writing something, or it's now in your phone and it's now able to assist you in so many things. I was on a road trip, and I want to put together a playlist for that road trip, and I selected all of the songs that I wanted on that playlist. It's something that I like doing. I don't know if people still make playlists anymore, but I like making playlists, and I put it all together. I use Tidal as a streaming app. I know you can use whatever your favorite streaming service is, but then I really wanted to kind of like pick the perfect track listing, the perfect track order, right? So it just flows smoothly, right? Because one of the things that I hate is when, I get a playlist together and then like the vibes of the songs aren't transitioning appropriately. You got like an up tempo song that comes right after like a smooth song or something like that. It just doesn't sit well. And so, I asked Chat GPT, all right, here are the songs that I have. Can you put them in like an order that will really be great for like a long trip? And sure enough, it did it. And on that road trip, I was like, wow, this is an amazing playlist. I tell that story to just show also how these AI technologies just make it into your just regular routine, boring, everyday. experiences, right? Creating a playlist isn't something to write home about, right? But having that AI assistant kind of change that experience for you is just it's just something to kind of point out because your life's experience and how you feel about how you move through the world, those things are impacted by those small situations. And if those small situations can be enhanced by technologies, I think it's something worth mentioning, especially as we have AI systems make their way through all aspects of our lives. And I think that's something that we should all be really kind of paying attention to, right? And how are AI systems being utilized to determine what happens in our life, right? So you could have a company or an organization or government or whatever deploy these AI systems, and they can determine, where you're placed and how you're better utilized, and how the organization that you're in is structured to better streamline processes to make things more appropriate, right? And so those are ways that they can really impact. And then not only that, but the labor force itself, other than what I just mentioned, will be impacted because individuals within that labor force will compete against emerging technologies, and then in many situations, they'll be replaced by those technologies, and so that's a very difficult aspect of the utilization of these technologies throughout society. And as these technologies uh, get better and better at things that they're doing, um, it's hard to predict what impact that will have on our society. And what we have seen, though, in many regards, are you're seeing some job loss. You just don't know what other areas or industries will be created from technology. So it's hard now to see exactly what the impact is. But you do have companies that, as technology becomes available, see no need for the exact same workforce or a different type of workforce, and that happens when you have technologies come on. So um I think those are just really, really big things to really kind of really think about. And like I said, the development of artificial intelligence and how artificial intelligence itself participates in its own development. I think that's also something that needs to kind of really be studied or considered. I don't know what to do with that kind of understanding, but AI systems, develop obviously, engineers and scientists, we drive the evolution of these systems and these technologies, but these systems and technologies also drive their own development in many, fascinating ways. I mean, you have a system that is able to come to a wide variety of decisions on its own. That system then has the ability to contribute to its own development in some capacity, and not to mention how those technologies are utilized by developers, scientists, researchers, engineers to develop even more technologies, right? And so technologies, they kind of feed into themselves. But I think the most fascinating thing to me is how people will interact with these technologies, how people will benefit from these technologies. What are the consequences of these technologies? These are some of the things that are at the top of my mind. These are some of the conversations that we will be having here on the Richard Watkins podcast. I'm obviously fascinated about technology. We're going to get people in to talk about, social media, the impact that social media has on our society. what is social media? I think a lot of us think we have an idea of what social media is, but what social media actually is perhaps a bit different. And so we're going to have somebody come in and talk about that, and also talk about like oftentimes when we engage with a social media platform, we fail to recognize how tailored that experience often is to us. Very rarely do we ever get a chance to see what another individual's social media experience is, right? It's kind of only for that person's eyes. When you get a phone, that's kind of like your gateway to the digital world that no one else most of the time no one else utilizes, right? And so, your experiences are specific to you. I also think the conversation in regards to energy is also going to be important, specifically obviously renewable energies, especially as changes in the climate as a result of how we utilize energies and energy technologies. It is something that is just at the top of mind. It wa and one of the biggest, breakthroughs in regards to energy, obviously, is nuclear, right? And specifically nuclear fusion. And what does that mean for, because all of these technologies require energy, right? No matter how great the technology is, at some point it requires, for now, right? Energy, right? And what does that mean when we have a breakthrough as massive as nuclear fusion? And what possibilities does that bring about in regards to energy? It's hard to imagine, a world without any energy needs. But when you have breakthroughs like nuclear fusion, right, that's something that you have to consider now, right? Is that you may have created a breakthrough in which solves your energy needs, and what does the world look like that doesn't have the same energy needs that it once needed or once had. And again, if you wrap that back up with technology that utilizes that energy, what then does that mean, right? So we're going to talk about a lot of that stuff. So just stay tuned for the Richard Watkins podcast. No matter what, uh, no matter where uh, you are in your life, in your career, in your education, learning never stops. And so always pursue knowledge, always pursue an understanding of a subject, no matter how deep of an understanding you think you already have. Just try to deepen that understanding and appreciate your blind spots and your areas of ignorance. It's always fun to explore. It's always fun to learn. This is why we put together here the Richard Watkins podcast, because learning is absolutely critical and knowledge is power. So come here, be better, be smarter, and remember, uh, understanding better prepares you for the future. But the future is not something to be prepared for. It's not something to wait for. The future is something to build. My name is Richard Watkins. This has been the Richard Watkins podcast. Have a great time. And until we see each other next time, take care, stay safe.